The average ancient human had bones so dense that modern forensic scientists sometimes mistake them for animal remains. Their grip strength was roughly twice what most people have today, and their teeth, before farming, were nearly perfect. No cavities, no crowding, no wisdom tooth impaction. Then we invented agriculture, and everything fell apart. This is not a story about diet. It is not an argument for eating like a caveman or abandoning modern life. It is something stranger than that. It is the story of how the single greatest invention in human history made us physically smaller, structurally weaker, and chronically sick almost overnight, and how the evidence for that has been sitting in the ground for decades, waiting for someone to read it properly. The bones have been trying to tell us something. Most people just haven't been listening. To understand what happened, you have to understand what your body looked like before it happened. Forensic anthropologists can read a skeleton the way a mechanic reads an engine. Every bone tells a story. The thickness of the cortex tells you how much physical load that person carried through their life. Muscle attachment sites, the rough patches where tendons once anchored, tell you which muscles were used, how often, and how hard. Growth lines in the teeth tell you whether the person experienced nutritional stress during childhood. Before farming, the bones tell a consistent story across every site, every continent, every era. Dense, robust, marked by heavy, regular, varied physical work from early childhood onward. The skeletons of hunter-gatherers, found across Africa, Europe, and the Americas, share a set of physical characteristics so consistent that researchers have given them a name. They call it the gracilization divide. On one side of it, robust, heavily built humans. On the other side, smaller, lighter, structurally weaker ones. The divide sits almost exactly at the invention of agriculture. The Natufians were one of the last major hunter-gatherer populations in the Middle East before farming took hold. Their skeletons date to roughly 12,500 years ago. When researchers analyzed their remains, they found femur bones, thigh bones, with cortical walls so thick they exceeded the measurements of most modern professional athletes. Not amateur athletes, professional ones. These were not people who trained for strength. They were people whose daily survival required it. They walked an average of 12 to 18 kilometers a day across uneven terrain. They carried loads. They climbed. They sprinted. They dug. Their skeletons reflect a lifetime of total body physical demand that no modern human, no matter how dedicated their gym routine, comes close to replicating. And then farming arrived. The shift to agriculture happened at different times in different places, but the skeletal evidence tells the same story everywhere it is examined. In the Nile Valley, researchers compared pre-agricultural and post-agricultural skeletons from the same geographic region. Before farming, tall, robust, minimal dental disease. After farming, shorter by an average of 4 to 6 centimeters, lighter bone density, and an explosion of dental pathology, cavities, abscesses, tooth loss that was essentially absent in the hunter-gatherer record. In North America, the same pattern appears at the transition sites where hunter-gatherer populations adopted maize agriculture. Bone density drops, stature drops. Markers of anemia appear in the skull, a condition called cribra orbitalia, tiny porous lesions in the eye sockets caused by iron deficiency. Before maize, almost none. After maize, present in a significant portion of the population. In Europe, skeletal surveys covering thousands of years show a clear and consistent reduction in average human height, beginning at the agricultural transition and continuing for thousands of years afterward. The average height of European males dropped by roughly 4 centimeters after farming was adopted and did not return to pre-agricultural levels until the 20th century. Let that land for a moment. It took us 10,000 years to grow back to the height our ancestors were before we invented farming. Here is why it happened. Hunter-gatherers did not eat well in the way that word is usually understood. They did not have guaranteed meals. They did not have caloric abundance. What they had was variety. On any given week, a hunter-gatherer group might eat dozens of different plant species, several different animal sources, insects, eggs, roots, and whatever fruit was in season. That variety meant a wide spectrum of micronutrients. The body got what it needed because it was drawing from an enormous and constantly shifting menu. Farming replaced that variety with one thing, one crop, one source. Wheat in the Middle East, maize in the Americas, rice in Asia, caloric monocultures. Enough energy to survive, not enough nutritional complexity to thrive. The agricultural body had more calories than the hunter-gatherer body in a good year. It also had far fewer micronutrients, and micronutrients are not optional extras. They are the raw materials the body uses to build bone, regulate immune function, wire the developing brain, brain, and maintain every system that keeps you functioning. Strip them out, and the body doesn't fail immediately. It just builds smaller, weaker, more vulnerable. Generation by generation, the bodies got lighter, but the physical decline was only part of it. Farming did something else that is harder to measure and arguably more significant. It created density. Hunter-gatherer bands lived in groups of roughly 20 to 150 people, spread across large territories. Infectious disease struggled to establish itself in populations that small and that mobile. By the time a pathogen had spread through a band, the band had moved on. There was no critical mass for epidemic transmission. Farming ended that. Permanent settlements meant permanent proximity. Humans living alongside their livestock for the first time. Pigs, cattle, goats, chickens, all of them reservoirs for pathogens that had never had a human host before. Tuberculosis, smallpox, influenza, measles. The great plagues of human history were not ancient. They were agricultural. Before farming, there is almost no skeletal evidence of epidemic infectious disease in human populations. After farming, it is everywhere. The bones of early agricultural populations show the physical signatures of chronic infection. Lesions on the long bones, periosteal reactions, indicators of immune systems under constant siege, at rates that simply do not appear in the hunter-gatherer record. Your immune system is not struggling because it is defective. It is struggling because it was built for a world that no longer exists. And here is the part that should make you stop. All of this was a choice, not a choice made by any individual, not a choice anyone understood they were making at the time, but a choice that the archaeological record documents with uncomfortable clarity. At the transition sites, the places where hunter-gatherer populations first encountered farming and slowly adopted it, the skeletal evidence shows that people could see what was happening to their bodies. There are sites where hunter-gatherer skeletons and early farmer skeletons exist in the same burial grounds, side by side, separated by only a generation or two. The hunter-gatherers are visibly more robust. The early farmers are visibly smaller. Anyone living in those communities would have been able to see the difference with their own eyes. They kept farming anyway, because farming worked, not for the body, for the group. A farming community could support 10 times the population of a hunter-gatherer band on the same piece of land. More people meant more labor. More labor meant more food. More food meant more people. The system was self-reinforcing. The individual body got weaker. The collective got stronger. You are the product of that trade. Your skeleton is lighter than your ancestors. Your grip is weaker. Your teeth, without modern dentistry, would be a catastrophe by middle age. But you are also here, in a city or a town or a village that exists because enough food could be produced to sustain a population large enough to build it. Every book ever written, every piece of music ever composed, every scientific discovery ever made happened because farming freed enough people from the immediate task of finding food to think about something else instead. The body got smaller. Everything else got larger. There is a word for what your ancient ancestors had that you do not. Osteobiography, the life story written in bone. Theirs said, this person walked far, carried much, worked hard, and ate widely. Yours, if read by a forensic anthropologist 10,000 years from now, will say something different. It will say, this person sat for long hours, moved rarely, ate abundantly, and lived longer than any human who came before them. Both are true. Both are the result of choices made so long ago that you inherited them before you were born. Your ancient ancestor was stronger than you, and you are living the life that their strength made possible.